Alright. Hey, I'm Aqua or Aquarius of Fallen Snow if you don't know me. Welcome to this episode of the Shootin Gallery podcast. Welcome back if you've been here before. In this episode, we're doing another guest episode. In this one, I was talking to my friend Jake, who I met recently, and we recorded this podcast episode after the recent live stream I did on YouTube, which if you haven't seen it, you should check it out. It was an interview with a crash retrieval pilot. I thought it was really interesting. And we also looked at one of the other guys on that Jake Barber's team. But yeah, in this podcast episode, we're talking about past loved ones, ghosts, and extraterrestrial experiences, basically talking about the phenomenon and going more in depth with these topics that we've been covering in the past few videos and live streams. So, if you like this episode of the podcast or you rock with the stuff that we're talking about, definitely check out my channel for the content I've been doing before because I got a decent amount of it now. And make sure you follow so you stay up to date with the new episodes of the podcast that are coming out and any new videos that are dropping too, right? And again, I don't want this intro to get too long. If you enjoy the video, make sure you drop a like and let us know what you think in the comments. And again, subscribe so you don't miss the new videos and it helps build the community. But that being said, I won't let this intro go on too much longer. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And like I say in my videos, I love you, stay safe, good luck, and take it easy. Yeah. So you were mentioning how you experienced like something kind of like what they were talking about in the News Nation interview.
Yeah. So I I got out of work one night with a bunch of my buddies and decided to have a campfire. Um, just a little bonfire. We decided to go up to one of my buddies' places. It's up on really up in the hills of farm field covered central New York valleys. So it was a very clear, very open view of the sky, and it was a gorgeous night, summer night. It was like 65 degrees, roughly, decent out, and crystal clear. So just perfect. Small breeze, nothing crazy.
Yeah.
And, it was pretty early on, actually. We had only just gotten the fire started. Each of us had a beer in hand. Uh,
Nice.
a couple of them were like maybe two, maybe three in, but for the most part, we were all just getting started. And so nothing to seriously haze our judgment. And I will say one of the guys there was not doing anything at all, perfectly sober. So it was me, and I think in the stream I said there was five other guys. I would be willing to say that there was four, um, as opposed to being five. Now that my memory serves me, if it serves me correctly. I'm not friends with any of these guys anymore for various reasons, unrelated. So it's just kind of hard for me to remember, I suppose. But so it's dark, well after sunset. um, Truth be told, I can't remember if the moon was out or not, but the sky was lit up with stars. And just about to the point where, I mean, even in this area, you can just barely see the glow of the Milky Way. Um, Yep. So I mean, it's pretty clear for light pollution. You can see light pollution off in the distance from distant cities, but it's very, very open. And we're just sitting around shooting the shit. I happen to be in basically a beach chair, so my ass was just about on the ground, and as such, the most comfortable position to be in is reclined pretty far back, but not too far back. So, if I were to relax my neck, I'd be looking straight up at the stars, but if I wanted to look at them, it wasn't too bad to hold my neck up either. And, we're all just sitting around this little itty bitty campfire. It's not like, no bonfire. I wouldn't call it cookable either, but, it's a fire. And, I don't know. I can't really remember if there was a point where we were having just a conversation, and I just decided to take a sip and lean back. look up and just kind of gaze for a minute while listening to everybody. And um, I remember specifically, I was the one sitting kind of in face, like my back was almost downhill in a way. So I was he reclined even more, and my back was to the west, and I was facing east. Now, as I'm leaning back, I would have been, you know, looking almost perfectly straight up, but westwardly if I were to look up, technically. And something in my upper right vision, so I would argue that would be the southwest, caught my vision, and so I started looking at it, and it took me like half a second, and I just went, "Guys, look up," because I saw 5 to 6 orange orbs flying over the top of our heads, and they all just went perfectly silent. And I didn't look to see if they were tracking what I was tracking, but I pointed up at exactly what I was seeing, and I tracked it with my finger across the sky as I watched it, and they were, like I said, 6 just kind of glowing, silent orbs moving much, much faster than a jet would across the sky, in almost a very surreal fluid motion, you know? There was no stream, there was no trail, there was no noise. They just existed at that brightness. Going I would, and if I were to say, horizon being 0 degrees and 90 being perfectly straight up, um, and to go back down the other side, it goes back down to 0. Let's just say it that way. Um, I would say when first saw them, they were at 30 degrees southwest, and I tracked them up and over our heads, over 90, back down to the 30-degree mark on the other end of the horizon, so the northeast. And they hit that point. I glanced down and I saw they were all looking at this at that point. And I looked back up because I still had my finger on it, and I could still see them. They were quite bright still. They were like the whistleblower said. I mean, they were the brightest things in the sky, but they were, I don't know. It looked different. Like it was not like a light that we have. It had an aura to it. The white sensation within the orange was definitely kind of accurate in that sense because it wasn't like they didn't flash. They were perfectly constant. And so, like I said, they got to that 30-degree mark, and they kind of hit that fixed point and didn't move for a second. So I glanced down, made sure everybody was looking at it, and they were. So I looked back up, tracked it again, and they still hadn't moved from that 30-degree mark, but now they were fading. And so I kind of moved my head left, right, up, down to get some perspective. And sure as shit, it seemed like they weren't just like fading out in brightness/intensity. It looked like they were literally fading distance-wise outward. Yeah, and we all just fell completely silent, stayed completely silent until we all finally lost sight of them. And I was the first one to break the silence, and I just I went, "Whoa, what do you guys think of that?" And everybody just kind of, "Oh, oh, whoa, that was wild!" Like, and yeah, I knew what I thought it was, and I didn't want to impose any thoughts on them, so I was like, "What do you guys think that was?" And I mean, was that a UFO? It had to have been an alien. I mean, was that alien? Oh, shit. I mean, it didn't make any noise, but so it was just a bunch of a group of fucking 20-year-old guys all trying to figure out, "Oh, what the fuck just happened?" Like, and I was like, yeah, I mean, no noise, the tracking, the way it faded out. All of us, I was like, how did you guys feel? And it was like, it just felt surreal. There was just such a surreal coolness to it. No, no impending doom. It was just peace and awe. And, you know, I've told quite a few people about that. And I mean, I'm sure those sources. I've never, because it's been a couple years since I've talked to them, peacefully especially. Uh, I don't know if they've ever corroborated the story to the people that I've told to go check with them, but I have told those people, like, don't just take my word for it. Like, go ask these guys that were my buddies. I mean, especially in the cases of when those people I was telling also knew them. So it was, like I said, I don't have any way to prove if they did corroborate the story. But that day, that night, we were all absolutely in agreement with what we saw, and it was cool.
And in terms of like not seeing a trail or anything, you don't think it was because it makes me think of, with advanced tech, and I've seen some of SpaceX's work in terms of new, almost like a new Blackbird type aircraft with a jet engine on it. Maybe something like that, but I'm sure that would release a trail. Then I wonder if maybe they would soup them up with super bright lights, so from a distance it just looks like an orb. But yeah, no, I definitely agree that there is there are things up in the sky that people are seeing, and I think it gets to a point of, okay, is it, man-made, or maybe entities interacting with humans, or is it more orbs of light and energy, more like the divine
Mhm.
feminine, or higher dimensional beings? But like you were saying, in a good sense, it's not like they're not coming down being like, okay, where's your leader, we're coming to take you guys over. It's more cool, there they are. Just it based on what we're starting to see now, it feels like it's more integration of that idea that extraterrestrials are here or have been here, or that it is, I don't know, it's such a crazy topic to go into, and that's cool that you did
Yeah.
witness something.
Yeah, and I thought of something. I want to clarify that. I did say that it was well after sunset, and that it was, after I had gotten out of work, but I was working a strange job. I was a bartender. So I had to clean up the bar and close the bar. So it was late. It was not just after sunset. Like, there was no chance of the sun being in the sky due to when we were having this fire. It was roughly, I would say, 1 to 2 a.m. in the morning, maybe 12 to 2 a.m. in the morning, somewhere in there. So it was literally twilight when there is no chance of sun hitting those planes up at the high altitudes. And, because that was something we talked about that night, like, it couldn't have been the sun. The sun's down, and one of us looked it up on our phones. Sure as shit, there's no trace of sunlight hitting this side of the world at that point. And,
Right.
as far as leaving no trails, our evidence of that was the starlit sky. As the orbs went over each star, it popped right back out the other side clean. Um, and then with especially the lack of noise thereof, because we had been sitting there for a few hours, and that was not an irregular occurrence to be up there having that type of fire in those conditions, especially. And that's why I wanted to note that, there was very little to no wind. It was barely a breeze, so there was no external noises other than the fire. We didn't have music playing. They were talking, and they did go perfectly silent. And we listened
It's not like
until
there
they
was
faded away.
a faint sound of a jet engine, or
Right. So in that, it was not a regular occurrence to have a fire up there. We, had many times seen the highest of altitude jets and how fast they will, even on the rare occurrences, traverse across the sky, and as well how much noise they make. It's not if they'll make noise, it's how much noise, because they always do. Um, so it was surreal and nearly inexplainable.
mm. Oh, that's awesome. And it's cool to hear people's lived experience more than, you know, I can only conceptualize it because I haven't yet experienced it. But based on what, these whistleblowers are talking about, it seems like you can just call the craps to you and say, hey, I want to pilot them, or I want to be a part of whatever's going on, and they'll gladly incorporate you.
Yeah, and I will say if it was five other guys with me, if there was somebody that I'm forgetting, that makes it so there were six craft for each of us. Um, and they weren't necessarily perfectly they weren't they were randomly disposed, but it was almost about a ring. You know what I'm saying? So it could have almost mirrored what we were as above, so below in the weirdest way, but it was traversing. We watched it traverse across the stars that were fixed. And um,
And I wonder,
it is weird because I was the only one that was looking up. It wasn't like I was thinking. I guess in a sense I was stargazing. I was seeing what I could see, looking for meteorites, looking for and I had in the past been like, people talk about seeing UFOs, and I had already been studying some. Um, well, I'd studied a lot of conspiracy theories, and at that point, I had been even deeper for the past that 2 years before that. And so I was kind of like, well, my mind is quite open. I'm surprised I haven't seen him, but it wasn't a conscious thing in that moment. I just leaned back to see what I could see, and there they were. So yeah, I mean, maybe it was time. Maybe I was ready for him, and I admittedly haven't had the chance or the time to even try to stargaze ever since that day. Night, I should say. Um, I mean,
oh,
I did a little bit after that, but it was more nights focused on, you know, the interaction of being with the group rather than looking up. So even if I was looking up, there was a lot less time looking up. Maybe it was a little more gravitational towards being with the group as opposed to I was calling them in, you know?
and I wonder if there was a sense of all of you guys were at that point of, oh, it'd be cool to see them because we've heard of them, but we haven't witnessed them. But it wasn't necessarily like calling them to you. Like that's kind of all the confirmation you needed at that point in terms of seeing them to believe them. And then
Yeah.
from there it can kind of grow into, we've been talking about our own realizations in the group chat and in the Discord, like, yeah, maybe that was the start of, oh yeah, it is in reality there. So now let's maybe take it a step further.
Yeah. I would certainly like to go stargaze and set some intent someday. Yeah, the metaphysical aspects of our bodies, I think, are a lot more powerful than most people realize. And coming from my background, I never, even up until 3 months ago, wouldn't have believed any of that, and yeah, any of the metaphysical beliefs that I hold now. And it's not really due to any one thing. It's just, I think the world is catalyzing in such a way that we're able to, especially with my ability to see things with an open mind and an open viewpoint. And yeah, I think we're just opening space and holding space for the possibilities. And now these things are, I don't know, arguably just time to a time for catalyzation, metamorphosis. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
It because like I was getting on about 3 months ago, I would have called this all hippy dippy shit, and so it's like, wow, where the fuck am I even coming from?
And I think that's definitely part of it in the sense of, if you don't, if we don't get this like right off the bat, oh yeah, it's possible there is this opportunity or there's this reality going on that they don't talk about, then instantly we can't like, it almost like shuts it down, or it kind of manipulates us in a way of thinking that it's not real or it doesn't exist, and then we have to break out of that, what we've been taught. Whereas if we built a base on, oh yeah, it is possible this is a reality, which maybe that's what they're trying to get to, then I wonder what the realities of the situation would be like in terms of, you know, how many crafts or orbs would we see at that point if everybody was conscious of it, and like, you know what I mean? It
Absolutely.
maybe a more Star Trek or uh, Star Wars, Star Trek esque future, right?
You know, especially looking back on ancient texts, and even ancient hieroglyphics. It seems that history may be deemed to repeat itself in that way. Who knows? We project them as folklores and fairy tales and stories from the past, but if we give them any truth, especially seeing what we're seeing now, um, it seems that it would be uh, a, a pattern.
Absolutely. Well, and in terms of your like waking up or quote unquote awakening process, because it is like I feel like it's just the journey of life more or less. What would you say were kind of the defining factors of that start of your journey? Was that the start of it then?
Phew, I mean, it was a big, truthfully told, no. It was a big confirmation for it. Let me think about how. So that was probably, well, it wasn't probably, it was 4 years ago. Maybe just a little over 4 years ago. So I would have been 23. So I've been doing this, looking into conspiracies, I should say. Um, well, at that point, I had been studying them for 9 years. So at this point, I'm looking at about 13, almost 14 years worth of just holding an open mind and an open expanse, excuse me, for the possibilities and just gathering subtle, quote unquote, evidences, whatever might align with one story versus the other, and very slowly gathering the pieces. I would say, though, being when I was 13, 14, I think it was world history in which either it was classmates or a teacher brought up the concept of flat Earth theory, and I, upon very little investigation, saw there was a vast amount of people that held some openness for their concepts. So I was like, well, there's a lot of other conspiracies too, but this is the one that everybody seems to hold the most weight for. So I it just worked for it was really a process of about 2 years, because I think I didn't know enough math at the time to really fully prove to myself, work myself through what flat earth theory held to be gained, because it does there is things to be gained from it. It's just and I think we're seeing this now with the 3D globe theory with their hold for dark matter and string theory, that they just they also find loops and inconsistencies within that theory, so it's kind of one and the same. And that's kind of what I proved to myself about 2 years after I had started looking into the flat earth theory, especially being that during that time and during my childhood, I had gone on many different journeys, many different trips and vacations to, and it wasn't like I was all over the world. It wasn't like I was even all over the place. It was just that my family kept getting invited to tag along with other families that were more fortunate, and we kept, revisiting places like the Outer Banks, where there just happens to be a lot of what I call scalar interference, and other forms of scalar modulation, where you see, heat transfer within the air, where it moves the particles in a way that creates illusions and manifestations, much like in the desert. And then, in the
Okay.
same sense, I was also going to other places, hiking the Northeast, where you get up in some of those elevations, especially when you're looking over expanses of the Great Lakes or even smaller lakes, or I really all of the different land masses that I got to see. You get to see how scalar modulation works amongst the different air pressures and stuff like that. So it just kind of through all those experiences, I was able to math my way through what was valid and what was not, within the flat earth theory. And then from there, I was like, well, okay, if it holds some truth, what about the rest of these? Um, and I just kind of worked from there. It wasn't even that, okay, I'm working on the globe theory now. No, actually, I held quite a bit of weight for that, and even the theory of evolution, I held a lot of firm weight in that in my time, finishing school, and I was focused on more of the uh, subtle conspiracy theories, and the things like government corruption and the interplay of certain groups within or societies within different parts of history, different governments, different countries, how they've spanned those places. So, it's been a long journey. It, but arguably, my third eye has been open my entire life. I was told up until I was 8 years old that I was an old soul. And then when I was 8 years old, my dad passed, and that was a huge, huge turning point for me. Um, because I, against all odds, was at peace with it because of a very profound spiritual experience I had through that. And with the peace that I held for his passing, um, I became kind of a light that drew people in, especially those that had lost someone that was close to them, because it was a spectacle. How could you hold so much peace for that? Um, and that was a journey for a lot of years as to why do I hold this peace? But uh, yeah, it's beautiful once you get on that journey and really meditate for whatever meditation means to oneself, which it really just is however you need to deal with the stress of diving into the deepest, most uncomfortable parts of your mind. And it's not even, you have to sit crisscross applesauce on the floor. It's literally just finding your way to deal with that stress that comes with it and then being able to dive back into it to solve the problem. That's meditation. And when I realized that that was what I had been doing that whole time, I was like, wow, that's really powerful. Well, what about this true meditation stuff?
Absolutely. Well, and what an age to have an experience like that happen at just because of the symbolism of the number 8 and the infinity sign. And I feel like that kind of ties into life and death and how everything is cyclical. It's like it's gonna
Yeah,
happen.
there were a lot of important numbers surrounding that event. You're not wrong. And it's funny that you bring up the number 8. I didn't even think about that. I'd never really thought about that until you just said that. But yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Um, the other synchronicity being that his passing was 4 in the morning on Father's, or actually it was during 3 to 4 in the morning on Father's Day that year, which was June 18th. It just so happened of 2006. So there's a lot of even numbers there. And that's the witching hour as well. So,
Yeah.
right.
Wow. So yeah, there's a lot of symbolism there, and I feel like I wonder if that's kind of what, pardon me, what these crash retrieval pilots are talking about with that connecting with that loving energy and that sense of peace. In their case, they also had the sadness, which I think was attributed with uh, the radiation, the fuel that they use for the UFO. But I wonder if in your case it would be that feeling of loss and that yin and yang of the two sides, right?
Yeah, it's I think you're nailing it because I always did well, especially in hindsight. I didn't feel like I was embodying the yin and yang, especially as a kid. I didn't know what was going on, but looking back on it, I definitely embodied that because, um, you know, you hold a lot of internal weight. It's a lot of weight, and that comes down on you as sadness and anxiety and depression. And but through that, as soon as I'd get around people, I loved. I love human interaction and I loved people, and so anytime that I was around any kind of people, I just tried to smile through my experiences and my emotions, and that smile, comes off as, "How are you so happy?" And that realization of, "Oh, wow, my sadness really doesn't even show through, and this is just a beacon of light for others." It was really powerful to see, and that is certainly a duality. I guess it was certainly um, it was certainly subconscious. It was slightly conscious. I was slightly conscious of my role, that I did need to hold myself that way. There were other factors too, that my mom, superimposing that I gotta fit in a certain role, and I hurt her image and yada yada yada. But at the same time, it wasn't just for her. It was for them as well. I wanted to see them smile, and so you embody that self even with and through the pain that you hold within, and it spreads it back to you. That's what I felt. So yeah, I mean it's kind of an interesting perspective, but yeah, that's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, I respect it. And like, what I don't know, what were some of the like ways that you could get through it, or what were some of the reasons that it maybe didn't feel so like traumatic, whereas other people had like
Um,
detriment?
well, so I always kind of kept in my heart, because I had been told by a lot of people that, man, you're so similar to your dad. I mean, he must be with you. He's with you. To take comfort in the fact that he is with you. And I was told that by everybody, but then the people that really knew him were like, damn, I mean, he's got to be with you, because like you're so similar to him. And you know what? Looking in hindsight, especially, realizing what I've realized now, is that I've got a large percentage of his memories, not just my own. Like, I can remember not like intricate details, but little snapshots of like the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s that I shouldn't be able to remember, but they were particularly from his life. Like, I know what his brother's old Firebird, really, I think it was a Trans Am. It was a Trans Am. He had the Trans Am, and my dad had the Firebird. I know what my uncle's Trans Am looked like before my uncle died in a motorcycle accident when he was 26. So tell me how that works. And how did I know? Because I got it confirmed by one of his old friends. Finally showed me a picture later on. My dad had told me the story before I had been 8 years old, and I could picture it in my head. He didn't describe it that well. He didn't tell me like what color of it, or what it was. Like, he didn't tell me what the engine was. I was too young for that shit. I was like, "What kind of car?" "Oh, it's a Trans Am, buddy. Kind of like my old one. Kind of like my red one." I pictured it to a fucking T, dude. Like, and I can picture what the salt mines look like underneath Cayuga and Seneca Lake. I've never been in there. There's no pictures of that shit, but my dad's been in there.
Well, yeah, and I wonder if it is a level of like tapping into that, what Bjorky talks about or what other people talk about with the Akashic records, in a sense of, having that kind of universal, or like all of our thoughts and ideas are tapped into this
Well,
universal consciousness and we can
I
access it.
definitely feel like I've been to the ethereal library in some instance, because I did have a sense of familiarity with it when I went through the DLC. Not really DLC, but no, I can't remember if it was an update or DLC to Skyrim. But when I saw it there, I knew what the fuck it was. It felt familiar. But I don't remember what I learned there. I also know, though, that I have definitely tapped from the Akashic record, the kind of waking state, um, tapping in of inherent knowledge. But I can honestly say that that's all, like, neither of those two explain where I was getting my dad's memories from. I can say positively that it was through my uh, experience with his passing that he, I really just kind of, I guess, gotta get into it. Um, I mean, the occurrence of his passing was what it was, but it was not until 3 specifically nights after his passing, because he passed in the morning time, like, like I said, 3 a.m., 4 a.m., somewhere in there. Um, he was transported to the hospital, and my mom came home at like 5:15 that morning. So, you know what I mean? Then that was like sunrise at that point. So count 1, 2, 3 nights later. And because I was so young and my mom was completely traumatized, and so was I, because I saw it happen. I watched my volunteer firefighters drag my dad into the hallway. And a couple of different times as the door was opening, I saw them using the defibrillator, AED, or whatever that thing is, and doing CPR on him. So I mean, I saw all of that, and I heard the ambulance pull away with the lights and sirens and all fading out. I mean, it was surreal. But so, like I said, we were traumatized. So she had me sleeping in her bed. Um, they had completely rearranged the room, gotten a new bed set. The mattress was the same, but it was covered, and new sheets, and et cetera, et cetera. They just couldn't afford to do all that. But like, I woke up in the middle of the night, like half woke up that third night after, um, to the sensation of being kissed on my cheek. And, I started kind of turning and throwing it off a little bit. I didn't open my eyes. It wasn't bugging me like that, but I was like, well, I'm trying to sleep. Come on now. Like, but I sensed it was sweet and loving, and I didn't mind it per se. It was just like, why? And figuring it's my mom. Well, like I said, I didn't open my eyes. I was tired, and there was no sense to, because my mom kept her room like a fucking cave, so there's no way I was gonna see anything anyway. So, oh well. And I go back to sleep. Well, wake up in the morning. Everything was, as normal as it can be, I suppose. I didn't really notice anything, I guess, and go downstairs, doing my thing, yada yada yada. She's sad. Um, She gets me my bowl of cereal. I sit down and I start eating it. And she takes this big sigh. She leans up against the counter. She's not looking at me. She starts, you could tell she's uncomfortable. She's like, Jake, why why were you kissing me in the middle of the night last night? And I just froze. And I looked up at her and I was like, uh, I thought you were doing that to me. And she just fucking froze. And we just stared at each other. And I can confirm, because I asked her later on when I was like, 13, 14, somewhere in there. I don't know. Either way, I was older. I checked with her. I was like, "Did your blood run cold when I told you that?" And she was like, "Oh God, yeah, completely and utterly cold. Like you put me in shock." And I was like, "Man, well, me too." But either way, so we both got chills. And she looked at me, and she took a moment, but she looked at me and she's like, "Well, Dad was saying goodbye." And I got this rush of, I guess, kundalini energy, I think is what we call it, where it was just this rush of, you know a very relaxing and soothing sensation that rushed down my spine. And I wasn't my blood wasn't cold anymore. I felt comforted. And in that moment, I realized, oh my God, I haven't been sad all morning. Her sadness was almost bothering me.
Right.
Ever since that moment that he kissed me on the cheek to say goodbye, he actually intertwined with my soul. And I recently, over this past summer, Granted, I had seen him a few times in my childhood, but not since I was 14 years old, so it's been 13 years since I've seen this man. I saw him pulling out of the same property that I saw him at the last time that I saw him 13 years ago. And I just happened to have his number because a few years back I checked to see if he was going to be coming north, and it just so happened that that plan fell through, so he never ended up coming up. Well, I don't talk to my mom anymore at all. Like, I haven't talked to her in 2.5 years, and it's for the better. It really is. She was not a healthy influence in my life. And within that, I got to really experience his name is Craig for who he was and who he is. And as opposed to kind of, censoring himself in front of the mother, per se. And, he said to me, I just wanted to check on you. I felt like it was my duty to your dad as one of his good friends that cared about him to make sure that you were doing okay and you guys were both doing okay, but most specifically you. Um, he even expressed, he's like, I sense that your mom kind of wanted to get with me. I was like, yeah, it was a little bit my fault. I needed a father figure and you were a pretty good one. So, um, I was like, that's my bad. But yeah, no, she would have probably loved that. So, but either way, I got to really interact with him on a personal level that really, I made it my goal and, almost a subconscious effort to be my purest self, unaffected by what I think my dad should be, just who I am. And the night before he left town to go back to where he lives, I asked him, I was like, through all this, how much of a percentage, out of 100, would you put me being similar to my dad, just in personality and demeanor, not necessarily in like, you know, I said ignoring the way that my dad was, um, not a people person in the way of being like sociable outwardly. He wasn't like he wasn't outgoing or anything. He was kind of reserved and like so on and so forth. I was like just purely in the way that he would have interacted with you. How similar are we? He was like, "Oh, give me a minute. That's a really good question." And he took about 30 full seconds, I swear to God, or he just had his eyes on the lake shore and his hands in his face to his face and he's just thinking. Took a deep breath and he said, I would say about 80 to 85%. And it just hit me like a fucking brick wall. Like I was floored. I literally felt floored. It felt like I just got fucking plowed to the ground, but I was still sitting in my chair. And I looked at him, I was like, I thought so. I fucking thought so. I really did, because this has been my inherent feeling all this time, is that he truly intertwined with my soul and gave me this gift. And he looked at me like, what? And he said to me, I actually had a heart attack a week before your father did. And I wondered, why not me? And I got to sit there and think about it and eased his mind as to why it wasn't him. And I really did. I gave him peace of mind, true insight as to why it was my dad and not him. And he cried. A grown man who has military experience crying in front of me, to me, gave me a whole hug and everything. And if that's not powerful, I don't know what is, man.
Yeah, that's that's great.
It's been a wild ride, this life.
Yeah, I feel like life is all about the lessons you learn and what you're taught along the way, not as the material or the you know I don't know. I heard somebody say you can take stuff with you into the afterlife, but I don't know how.
Let me give you some insight. Because my dad didn't just intertwine with me. There was one day that, I mean, and somebody could literally just as easily say that I'm a schizophrenic for feeling this way. But I was, well, for the 2020 pandemic, we moved out of my house, my childhood house, at least vacated it, and moved our stuff temporarily, but turns out to be permanently over to my stepdad's house. Not really a stepdad, but a really good guy. I respect him. I don't respect my mother. I don't even live there anymore, but my stuff's still over there. And et cetera, et cetera. Well, I was moving one of the last trips of items, my own stuff, to that other house. And it was a beautiful day, absolutely beautiful day. I was playing some great music, and I don't know. I don't know what happened. I just started talking. I didn't realize I was talking, but I was talking. I was talking my thoughts out loud. And I came to a point where I realized that I was talking in the form of talking to someone. And I just kind of looked in my passenger seat, and I realized that for absolutely no reason, I left my entire passenger seat cavity empty. Every other trip I hadn't, but this one I had, and I had just enough stuff that would have filled that space. And I didn't bring it. And I just kind of, to myself, was like, hi, Dad. And it flooded me. Same feeling. Okay. So there's that. I felt like he was not just within me, as me, but beside me that day. Here's where it gets even trippier. Now, one day, granted, when I was 8 years old, I was going from second to third grade, okay, just for context. One day in fifth grade, my mom's still at work. I've got, about an hour and a half worth of time before she gets home after I get off the school bus. No big deal. Doing math wheels. It's a beautiful day. Both of my cats are next to me. Nothing's going on upstairs. And I want to preface that I have heard many, different men, service types because I had renovations done on my room, on the attic, on the soffit, all sorts of stuff. A ceiling fan installed in my mom's room, as well as a whole freaking, repainting and stuff done. So a lot had been done to the upstairs. I heard a lot of boots going on and a lot of footsteps. Even, with their socks off, because my mom was kind of a nut. If she had just cleaned, she would literally ask the fucking carpenters to take their goddamn boots off. And so, I got to hear that too. And I so I'm sitting there doing math wheels. My mom's not home yet, and both of my cats, like I said, are right next to me. And I've heard the house shift. I've heard all sorts of things. I heard distinctly my father's footsteps walk out of his room, basically from his door jamb, across the hallway to the top of the staircase, which is like, he would have done basically an S-shaped maneuver, then walked down a long-ish hallway and rounded a corner to get to the top of the stairs. And that's exactly what I heard. And I froze. My blood ran cold. And I just, I took a minute. I was staring, staring, staring. And I glance at my cats without making a sound. And they're both staring up the staircase. So I kind of took a couple more minutes to make sure that nothing else was going to move. And I picked up one of my cats and I brought her with me, walked upstairs, and investigated. I checked every nook and fucking cranny and there was nothing. Now here's where it gets weirder, and this is the last congruity I have for my own dad. After I vacated my old house, I went back there and the energy had shifted to the way, in a way that it even felt, um, I guess the best way for me to put, there's better words for me to use, but I can't come up with them on the fly. The best way for me to put it right now was pissed off. The energy just felt pissed off.
Yeah.
It was not friendly. And it was almost like he was mad that we had abandoned the property. But here's the funny part. My mom had actually barred me from renting that place 3 times over from that point, um, up until that point. So I had offered to be in that, but go back to that place and live within it, and she had not allowed me to, even though I could afford it. She told me I couldn't. It was totally unfair. It would have created healthy conditions that would have allowed me to keep those jobs and make enough money to actually be able to sustainably keep that house. Whereas I have since lost all of the job opportunities that I had each time that I offered to rent the house from her. So my girlfriend now, she had this job where she was walking dogs, and one of her clients was on one like side of the neighborhood of my house, and then she would have to backtrack an hour and a half later to another side of the neighborhood on the other side of my house, which was not very far away. But we were in that location far away from literally everything else, as far as like doing anything, saving gas, whatever, what have you. So I extended the offer, like, hey, it's a point in between. You might as well like go there as a checkpoint, kill some time, not waste your gas. Charge your phone, get warm, whatever. Okay, yeah, sounds good. Second time she ever tried it, she went to go put the key in the door, and she said that it was like as she was doing the drum, it was like somebody was undoing the bolt as she was doing it, but she could see through the window. There was nobody there. But she said that it felt like somebody was undoing the bolt with her as she put the key in and twisted it.
Huh.
Kind of tripped her out. She took a second, looked, nobody. Okay, that's weird. Walks in, right? Takes a few steps, listens. There's nothing going on. Feels weird though, she said. And she takes a couple of steps, goes to take off one shoe, puts her toes onto her heel, starts to slide her ankle out, and she said it sounded like a very angry, large man running across my upstairs hallway and then down around the staircase, and I've heard that noise. She said it was like a raped ape coming down those stairs. She'd never heard anything like it, and there's quite a few twists and turns before you would come into contact, like visible contact with the kitchen, and which is the kitchen is long, long, long. And she was in an entryway that's off of the kitchen, so she was like peeking in through a doorway. And she didn't waste any time. She said she was basically out of the door by the time that thing hit the bottom of the staircase. And she slammed the door and she was like, "I'm sorry, but I'm I'm not locking the door."
Yeah.
So I went over there later and I checked everything out and everything was untouched. There was nothing. Nobody had touched anything in that house. There was plenty of things that could have been taken. Nothing was taken. Nothing was touched. And the door was still unlocked.
See,
So
it,
yeah, I'm
uh,
done. That's Elfine.
oh, and that's that's a crazy story, like how all these different pieces work together. And as you're telling me this, it almost feels like maybe there's some sort of like unfinished business, or that's maybe where the idea of like ghosts or poltergeists come from, is maybe, you know, maybe because he wanted you to be in that house, or because of the connection, something, maybe he was upset that you weren't there, or maybe that's the idea of poltergeist, telling people to get out of a property because it's not who they feel should be living there, kind of thing. But
Right.
yeah, that's like, it absolutely makes sense that I think it would be your dad, and I think there is a level of, I wonder if ghosts or that like residual energy is them consciously being here making those decisions, or if it's kind of a part of like what is left from life, but there is maybe not a disconnect, but like I'm kind of,
I agree. I've often wondered the exact same thing, man.
have any solid conclusions on, like, I guess since
Um,
it is all consciousness, I guess in a way anything is possible, right?
oh, give me 1 second here. I gotta think. I don't know. It's a hard tell, I guess.
Oh, I feel like the idea of ghosts is the, the person that would make the most sense, a bit of a Occam's razor situation, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
I wonder if people who say like, "Oh, I don't believe in ghosts" or whatever, it's more of a like either a fear of what could possibly be there, or just cutting off that, not allowing that message to get to you, kind of thing. You know?
it does make you wonder, doesn't it? I think I'm for I don't know. It's, it is, I mean, it's tough. It's also, nuanced. It's hard to come up with any solid conclusion. But I guess theories.
Yeah. Well, and like Danny says, which I really like, it's a kind of a yes and situation where everything is possible, so why can't it all be happening all at once, right?
I suppose. Well, yeah. I do feel more inclined. I suppose that's really what I should be using as the feeler rather than thinking. Um, that is a powerful tool.
Right.
You know what? In that reflection, I would say if I were, and I'm so sorry about the water noise. I need to give myself some water here.
Oh, no, no
But
worries.
I would say in the way of reflection onto that last subject as to maybe why he was pissed off in that sense. Um, um, I've since come to the conclusion that at that time I was being lied to by her, and she was kind of not necessarily using me, but using her scenario to lie to me to gain access to me. And I have also since learned that she told me straight up outright that she performed a witchcraft spell, some form of binding spell, in order to bind me to her. And she wouldn't tell me which one. She's never let me touch I mean, it's a published book, but I'm sure she's got some kind of notes or something. I mean, or I would be able to pinpoint what the fuck she did. Um, Within that book. So she's never let me touch it. But I guess, yeah, I would say that within that realization, I would feel that probably he was telling her, "Get the fuck out of my house. You're not the one for my son. You're not welcome here." That was a big lesson in his life, was lessons of love. And that was pretty much all his life lessons were lessons of love and trust. and being let down from that trust. So I would argue that would be, yeah, I would say that, it was kind of him offering the sanctity to that house that he was within and died within. And because they said that they never brought him back. I mean, they loaded him into the fucking ambulance with no pulse, trying to get him back still. So he was gone before he even got to the hospital, type deal. Uh,
See. Well, and
right. So
what is the
I mean,
name of
being
the
an
book?
infected energy, I would argue that's probably what happened there. Uh, I don't know what the Well, I could go look, I suppose. Let me grab a quick snack because I did just finish eating, but I'm hungry.
I'm gonna
Oh
grab it.
yes. Or Betty, give me a Betty. Okay, let's see. She might have hidden it on me. I think she might have.
That's fair.
I mean, truth be told, out of respect for her, I've never looked into it.
No, that's
It's
fair.
rightfully so. I don't really care. I've had wizards since break that binding spell, so
True.
I'm beyond it. But
And I think it
it's
is a
somewhere in this bookshelf. It'd be a fucking mess for me to try and find it.
no, that's okay. And I guess that's kind of out of place for me to ask. But it's also kind of
Oh, I can't hear you for some reason. I don't know why, but I can't. I don't know what that's all about.
how's that?
Just wanted to make sure it wasn't on my end either.
Is that better? You can hear me?
No, actually, it's not. What the fuck? Hold on a second. What about now?
I replugged in my.
Oh, for some reason my audio is not working. Let me close the app.
Testing, testing,
Okay, how about now?
testing, testing.
Oh my god, it's so broken. What the hell? Wait a minute. Maybe did I mute you? Now try it.
Testing, testing.
What the hell? Wait a minute. Change audio output. Noise suppression. Why? What's going on here? Oh. Oh. Wait a minute. Okay, now try it.
Testing, testing.
Oh my god. Okay. All right. Click on click on me, and you can change my personal sound settings to be muted.
Yes. And I had that issue with Bjorky one day where we joined a call and it was like that off the bat, and I didn't know why or how it happened. So I feel like Discord randomly does it to.
No, I saw that I had your profile menu pulled up, and I was hoping I didn't touch anything. I totally didn't.
Oh shit! No, it's okay. No worries. Um, but yeah, it does. It does feel a bit like an Anakin an Anakin paradox with your mom in the sense of, oh, maybe she was feeling the sense of loss with your dad, and then she didn't want to lose you. But at the end of the day, if you're pushing for, if you're reinforcing that sense of you're gonna lose someone or that sense of lacking someone, then I feel like that's gonna reinforce or manifest that outcome, right?
Yeah, it certainly did. It drove me right away.
Well, and
I
that's
mean, and to the point where, I mean, there was many factors of that, but I gave her every chance that I could for nearly, I would say, fucking 12 to 14 years of my life. I gave her a chance to shapen up and be better and get better, and she just got worse and worse. I was like, okay, that's it. You're done. I'm done.
right.
Move on.
Well, and even with the Anakin paradox, I feel like I wonder if it's that turning to the quote unquote dark side, using that witchcraft or what it was, but I feel like there's something that it'll compound on itself in a way to the point where it gets to outcomes like this, or maybe leading to worse physical or mental health conditions. Like, yeah, you can go to these extents with something like witchcraft, but then what is the price you pay, I guess.
Oh, and I want to say that wasn't my mom that was doing that. That was actually my girlfriend currently that was doing that. So that's why my girlfriend was being chased out. That's my thought. Yeah.
Oh, it was your girl. Yes, true.
No, no, I don't know if my mom ever got chased out. I don't think my mom would even take note if she ever did, but
Yeah, and that even adds an extra layer to it, saying there have been issues with we don't have to go into it, but yeah, there have been things you've noticed that could align with that, people holding on to negative energy, and maybe that's why they were chased out of an otherwise peaceful or sacred place kind of thing.
yeah.
Which, yeah, I wonder if even poltergeist activity like that is more because the ghost in question can sense the energy, and you know because even in our building we had an issue where there was a lady that I guess passed away, but people didn't check on her in a while, and I guess our whole building was dealing with bed bugs. We actually had to get rid of our mattress because of it, and now we're on an air mattress, or we have been since then, and it's been a while. But we're not risking, getting a new mattress and having issues with it. But I wonder if, because there's been a level of me, like at the start when I heard that, I was not wanting to acknowledge it or doing that mentality of, oh, it's not real, or it's not, I don't want to experience that. But now I'm like, okay, well, if I do experience that, I hope it teaches me a lesson. But I also feel like I would hope that I wouldn't be one of those people that would be pushed out of this building because I'm trying to encourage people to look into this stuff. We are trying to and really promote the conversation of, oh yeah, it's probably real, and if you want to, you can probably interact with those beings or entities. I'm sure that's what the whole Ouija board situation is about. But it's more like the level that you want to acknowledge things, or the level that you want to quote unquote play into things. And if you want to, because like you said, you had an experience where you were talking to, or you were able to communicate with father even after he's passed. I hope people hear this and try to communicate with their loved ones if there's people they would like to talk to, because I feel like when you're
Yeah, it
gone.
was interesting. I mean, don't get me wrong. I didn't feel like it was a back and forth or anything. It really did just feel like I was speaking my mind, but it was like easing me, like I was speaking to somebody, and it was very surreal.
Right, and maybe because there was an energy there that was listening you know
Right, right. Yeah, I certainly hold that belief myself. I do.
gone from the physical but never the eternal, right?
Okay.
And that's a beautiful sentiment, and I hope that there's one takeaway that people get from this conversation, that we are all connected, and there is a deeper level to consciousness than just this physical reality that we perceive. So what is the extent of that, right?
I would say so. That's certainly been my takeaway from all of it. It's been kind of my driving factor is, no matter how much I love this and that and the other thing, At the end of the day, what puts a smile on my face is putting a smile on other people's faces, and that's a beautiful fucking thing. And I would say that within that, music helps. Music connects all things. It can make you feel things and remember things and connect things that you wouldn't even believe. It connects us all because, well, because of a lot of reasons. But my argument would be that frequency describes the ether, and that would be a whole chain of thought to walk down. So, you know,
100%. I mean, I think this has been a good conversation already, but I think we could even record a whole nother podcast talking about your experience with what was it? Connecting and there's a word for it when you're in that experience.
oh, projecting.
Yes, projecting or channeling that concert you were talking about while you were listening to it, and you felt like you were actually there, right?
Yeah, yeah, there's definitely some powerful aspects to that, yes. Um, I think that came with years of meditating through music, but um, yeah, I think there's a lot to that, but I'm sure that anybody could do it given enough time and focus with it.
Yeah. Oh, and I even feel it in the sense of I was always listening to music through high school going, okay, this is cool. There are some people I really resonate with, but most of the mainstream stuff was so superficial and there wasn't much like content to it that I felt was worth listening to personally. So that partly helped me get into making music. And I feel like that's almost the other side of that same feeling in terms of like you can connect to the music at such a level that then you create those feelings and you put your own stuff into it. Like it's a yeah.
Absolutely. It's long been a dream of mine to create some form of music for my own self, and excuse me, sorry. Never really had the means to be able to do it for my own self. I did practice with a band when I was a quote unquote band. It was just me and my buddies, but we were trying. We were trying to do cover songs, and we made a few riffs of our own. Not necessarily full songs, but those guys were trying. I know they were composing things for us, and it never came to fruition in time. And it is sad, but I believe plenty of time.
Yeah,
And
infinite.
honestly, the way that I see the future going, I think it's even, yeah, like you said, beyond just the infinite possibilities that we've been promised. I think it's an opportunity to have almost a whole new start for most people, if not all. Here comes there. There's evidence leaning one way or the other on that, or suggesting it's one thing or another, but I just, have a strange feeling, I would argue, beyond all of the evidence that something's going to be beautiful here soon. And
And it's about pardon me, it's almost like it's almost like it's beautiful already, right? It's more being able to understand the level or the depth to the beauty that is life, I feel. There's so much.
yeah, you know what? Maybe it is, maybe the beauty is that there's a lot more people waking up to that.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's the best part about it. It's getting more people into this conversation and being like, "Well, what do you think? What experiences have you have?" And then being able to connect those to the whole. Yeah. It,
Absolutely. The more people take their experiences seriously, um, I think the further we'll get as a species. Truth be told.
I totally agree. But yeah, this has been an amazing conversation, and I will
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
absolutely. Here, I'll set this down here for now. I'll end this recording. Thank you to everybody for watching. Yeah, hopefully we can do another podcast soon, talking about what we were mentioning. Right?
Absolutely.